Hi, y'all, and welcome to tonight's live stream. Tonight, we're going to be asking the question, did Richard Allen kill two young teens in cold blood on February 13th, 2017? Or is he an innocent man being prosecuted for political reasons while authorities ignore a mountain of evidence against a shadowy group called the Odinists? Tonight, we'll be introducing a case that is more bizarre, more Byzantine than any novel you have ever read. And you made it. It's Friday. Welcome to the live. Hope you have got a great weekend planned and really good weather. Although we were hearing from NHL Pens and our Canadian contingent that it's pretty cold there. So anyway, I hope you're having good fall weather. We're in the Southern Hemisphere, good spring weather. Tonight, we are going to start a journey. We are going to be asking ourselves, is the prosecution right that Richard Allen is guilty of killing two teens? Or, and that's what the prosecution says, or is the defense right that he's an innocent man, he's being persecuted for political reasons, while law enforcement ignores a group of self-proclaimed pagan Odinists and white supremacists? That's what the defense says in a 136-page document that they filed last week. Now, I doubt any of us will finish deciding this week, but tonight's where we get started. And where we absolutely have to begin is with two little girls, two young teens, 13-year-old Abigail Williams and then 14-year-old Libby German. They were best friends who did nothing other than take a walk together after school. And what happened to them is unimaginable. But we did not learn just how unimaginable it was when the prosecution filed its initial probable cause affidavit. We didn't learn that until the defense filed this new motion, this lengthy motion with so much detail. I'm going to summarize both of those for you tonight. We're going to get into the details in later videos. We're just getting started tonight, so you don't want to miss that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you get the notification when we go on future videos. And we cover the legal cases that everybody's talking about, that you're already talking about. And our goal is to make them understandable for everybody. So another free thing you can do to help the channel is to hit the like button for the video. So I'm going to cover three broad categories tonight. The first is I want to talk about what we originally knew about the murders of the two young girls, because of very limited, especially now that we know more, very limited information was passed on to the public. So I'm going to talk about what that was. Then I'm going to talk about what the prosecution told us in its initial filing for this case. And then the third thing I'm going to talk about is these new claims in the defense motion. They are bombshell. Prepare to have your mind absolutely blown. So start with what we originally knew. We knew that two girls went for a hike. Along an old abandoned railway. It was a trail, evidently pretty popular because they interviewed plenty of people who were on the trail that day. At 2:07, Libby posted a picture of Abby walking along the bridge. That's the last time we know for sure that they were alive. Their bodies were found the next day. There were two clues that were given. The first was Libby's phone had a shot that the police put out of a man on a bridge, this shadowy shot that you see here. And we were told that there was a recording, and at 2:13, a man said, "Guys, down the hill." That's what we knew pretty much about it when we then got when years later, 6 years later, there was finally a probable cause affidavit. The prosecution presented an overview of some of its very best evidence. That's what normally happens in a probable cause affidavit. I'm going to make this pretty quick and just take you to the highlights of it because I really want to address the defense motion. But I'm going to show you, generally speaking, what the prosecution told us. And here's what they said. They said that there was a video from victim two's phone, that would be Libby, that shows that at 2:13 p.m., they encountered a male subject. We knew that from the still shot. That the video recovered from victim two's phone shows victim one that would be Abby, walking southeast on the Mononhai Bridge while a male subject wearing a dark jacket and jeans walks behind her. And I want you to pay attention to all the different ways that the clothing is described, because that's something the defense is going to make a big deal out of. There are different ways that the person's clothing were described. Several people testified to seeing a man there, but they had different ideas of what he was wearing, what he looked like. So near the end of the video, a male is seen telling the girls, seen and heard, guys down the hill. The girls then begin to proceed down the hill and the video ends. Clothes were found in the Deer Creek belonging to victim 1 and victim 2, south of where their bodies were located. There was also a .40 caliber unspent round less than 2 feet away from victim 2's body. Oops, went too fast there. Where was I? One back. Okay. Between victim 1 and victim 2's bodies. The round was unspent and had extraction marks on it. Those extraction marks are going to be important. Interviews were conducted with 3 juveniles. These were obviously not the girls because they were interviewed. Blue jeans, and here's how they described the person they saw. One said blue jeans, a really light blue jacket, and his hair was gray, maybe a little brown. One recalled him being in all black and having something covering his mouth. One said he was not very tall with a bigger build. One said a black hoodie, black jeans, and black boots. Not exactly the same. More witnesses wearing a blue or black windbreaker jacket, baggy jeans, white male wearing blue jeans and a blue jean jacket. And then they also talked about a vehicle. A vehicle was parked in an odd manner at the old Child Protective Services building. And then they interviewed Richard Allen. That's the man ultimately arrested, now charged with murdering Abby and Libby. And he told them, he admitted he had been on the trail that day. He told them what car he was driving. He admitted he was there. He said he went there to watch the fish, which I thought was curious. How much can you watch a fish from a bridge, I wonder? But he told investigators that he was wearing blue jeans and a blue or black Carhartt jacket with a hood. So that's his story. And I think I've finished. Yeah, I've finished what he, so that is the basic outline that we had when we suddenly received this latest document. And let me talk to you a little bit about what the document we received is. I'm going to pull that out for a minute. So, and first of all, let me go back. To sum up what the prosecution was telling us, they told us he was on the trail. Witnesses only saw one man on the trail, and he might or might not have fit that description. We'll see some sketches in a minute. They were killed, Libby and Abby, in this time frame. There was an unspent round from his gun found within 2 feet of victim 2's body. Now, from that, my assumption was they had been shot, and then they had found this unspent round. But actually, from the defense brief, I don't believe the girls were shot. Apparently, no DNA was found at the scene. We hear that from the defense brief, and it's not mentioned by the prosecution. And I want to add that although it's not listed here, the prosecution says they have recordings of Richard Allen while he's in jail, admitting to his wife that he murdered the 2 young girls. So that will be added to their pot of evidence and what they have in the way of evidence. Overall, that's not super strong, I wouldn't say. The jailhouse confession being the most important piece, and also that unspent round being important because the prosecution says that matches the markings that would be caused by a gun that Richard Allen owned. And it was between the 2 girls, but they weren't killed by gunshots. So there is a little bit of confusion there. But now it is time to have your mind blown, because we are going to talk about the defense theory. And let me tell you, it is anything but traditional in terms of a defense. Now, the way we know this is because the defense has asked for a Franks hearing. That's what their 136-page document is to support. So what's that? What's a Franks hearing? It comes from the name of a Supreme Court case, and the idea is when law enforcement wants to get a search warrant, they have to go before the court and say, here's the evidence we have that makes us believe that there would be something, there could be evidence located in this place. And then the judge approves or disapproves the search warrant request. What if what law enforcement tells the judge is false? What if law enforcement lies to the judge, makes up stuff? Well, in Franks, the defendant argued that law enforcement had in fact lied to get the warrant. So the prosecutor, the defense said, shouldn't be allowed to use any of the evidence found in the course of executing that warrant. And the Supreme Court said, we agree with you. So important to remember, the reason to do a Franks hearing then is if something was found that the defendant does not want to come into trial. If nothing was found in the search warrant, that'd be really useful for the defendant, right? The defendant could say, isn't it true you executed 5 search warrants and found nothing to connect my client to that murder? But there must have been something they found, and it appears the most likely thing that is of great concern to them is this bullet, which the prosecution says matches the markings that would have been created by Richard Allen's gun. So now let's take a look at the brief. Now, I have never seen a brief quite like this. It's well written, although it's written in a very unusual style, and there are some comments in there. I may not have time to even point them out today, to be honest, but we'll ultimately get to that. Corey Richens can maybe take some lessons because, wow, it reads like a novel. It is the craziest, most unbelievable novel you've ever seen, read, heard. It's sort of in an odd order. So what I'm going to do, and this is just an overview, so I've kind of rearranged things. So I'm going to be flipping back and forth through the document as I talk to you about it. I'm going to cover 5 topics. First is just an overview, what the defense says. Second is specifics about the crime scene, because that's really important. I'm going to give you what you must know, but I'm not going to go into gory detail. That's just me. The third thing I'm going to talk about is the defenses pointing to other potential suspects. We'll talk about who they are and what the defense says is the evidence that supports those people possibly being suspects in the murders of Libby and Abby. The fourth thing we're going to talk about is that the defense says that eyewitness testimony was misrepresented to the court. And we're going to talk about what the defense says the eyewitnesses really said. And then the fifth, we are going to talk about the Odinite prison guards and the patches. And you'll just have to wait till we get there to know what I'm talking about there. So let's get started. You know I'm a big color coder. So I'm going to start with just the green, because remember I'm doing a super overview, not detail at all. Oh, that's probable cause. Okay, I'm going to start with just the green here, and we're going to go through and I'm going to just give you an overview of what they are saying happened. Where is my green? Well, I'm not seeing my green. So members of let's start here. Members of a pagan Norse religion called Odinism, hijacked by white nationalists, ritualistically sacrificed Abigail Williams and Liberty German. Is that crazy or what? They're saying that they were ritually sacrificed by people following this religion. And they're saying that early on, the prosecution knew, the law enforcement knew that there were all of these Odinists who were involved. There were all kinds of things that pointed to some kind of involvement of Odinism, so much so that they contacted a professor at Purdue, and they now say, we dropped all that because the Purdue professor told us, no, that's not Odinism, ignore that. But now they say they can no longer find this they can no longer figure out who this professor was. They can't identify him. They're unable to go back and find any notes from him. And the defense is saying that makes no sense. If this guy was so important that he caused you to drop a theory, then you would easily have known that you would have kept track of all of that. You wouldn't have just dropped it and let it disappear. So you know what I'm going to do, because it's really going to slow me down if I can't have my green I did have a computer crash right before, so we just have to really hope that I did not lose my green. Give me just a second, and I'm going to see if I can find the one with the green markings, because it'll be a lot faster if I can. So if you'll give me just a second, it'll take me a minute. Maybe I have the wrong one up. That would be really good if I did. Then it would be faster. Otherwise, does this have green? Yes, this has green. Okay. All right, there we go. Okay, very good. This is the one. Sorry about that. Wrong document, but here we go. Okay, so they also talk about in the defense about exculpatory evidence. And I don't know that I've ever heard of this happening before, but they say that one of the investigators, Rushville Assistant Police Chief Todd Plick, now retired, that he worked on the Delphi murder case. And after reading the probable cause affidavit against Richard Allen, he actually retained a lawyer and contacted the prosecution and said, I think you missed the boat. He said that the affidavit pointing the finger at Richard Allen was far less compelling than the totality of the information that he and other detectives had accumulated during the Rushville portion of the investigation. He felt like, and I don't know that I've ever heard of an investigator contacting the prosecutor and saying, wait, it looks to me like you may not have the right guy, but that's what they're saying he actually did. The letter was not provided to the defense until it was obvious from the last round of depositions that the defense, who had doggedly pursued witnesses as far away as Georgia, would certainly be talking with Todd Plick. And that's a theme throughout here. They say the prosecution isn't producing everything to us. They are, in fact, holding back on some of these documents, and we aren't able to see all of the things that would show that our client is not guilty. And the prosecution has a responsibility, a duty to produce that information. So they say that that they believe also the prosecution has withheld several other exculpatory pieces of evidence, including an 85-page compilation of reports by this witness, Plick, this investigator who contacted them, and several videos. They also talk about the FBI and say that according to the summary of Plick's investigation that he attached with his letter, the FBI determined that the individual responsible for the individuals were involved in Nordic beliefs. This was news to the defense because none of that, they say, was produced to them. So the defense is saying even the FBI believed that there was involvement by people who had Nordic beliefs. So Carroll County, and they say, look, the sheriff didn't give us this. This wasn't in the search warrant. All of this exculpatory stuff was not in the search warrant. And if it had been, the judge would not have granted the search warrant. Then the defense says that Richard Allen has zero connections to any pagan cult or pagan cultists, and furthermore, no forensic evidence such as DNA or electronic evidence links Richard Allen to the girls or to the crime scene. And they take it all the way. They say, i.e., he is a completely innocent man. So, and often you don't have that sort of blunt statement, that forthright statement by the defendant, innocent. And he is all the way innocent. This is a setup. That's what the lawyers are saying. So now I want to flip over. I'm going to pull out and talk to you just a minute about the crime scene. Like I said, I'm going to give you what you have to know, but no additional past that, because why? So it was horrifying. I'm going to make it as painless as possible. I'm going to give you a summary. And here's a quote from the defense brief. Sticks and tree branches were deliberately, carefully, and proficiently placed on each girl in a certain arrangement, mimicking certain runes. Runes being either letters or magical symbols. At least one of the branches appears to have its end cut off cleanly by some type of tool, like an electric saw, providing proof of a preconceived plan. Additionally, the blood of Liberty German was used as the paint to mark a tree with a rune that looked similar to the letter F. Now, Libby was killed, they say, at a tree and then dragged into position and her body carefully arranged. She was not dressed. Then the sticks were put over and under her body in a really specific pattern. A rune or mark or letter was on her, and these runes figure prominently, the defense brief says, in Odinism, the religion. Both of her hands were covered with blood, and the blood then was dripped all over her. Her neck was cut. It does not mention her being shot at all. It mentions instead her neck being cut, which makes the bullet they found somewhat unclear, like what that is, what's the significance of it. Abby also was arranged very precisely with sticks in patterns on her. The sticks made the pattern of the symbol for hail, and that will become important later and something the defense argues. Big sticks were woven in and out. One tree branch, as I said, was cut. There were sticks mimicking antlers above her head. Her neck was cut, but she had no blood on her clothes. They conclude the killer had to have redressed her. And that's also supported by the fact that she had on some of Libby's clothes as well as 2 bras. Libby's shoe was under her, and Libby's phone was under the shoe. They suggest perhaps a method for that would be that perhaps she was killed while hanging upside down. Maybe that's why she had no blood on her. That letter F that was written in blood on a nearby tree, I want to show you what I think that looks like. I tried to find something similar to this, as close as I could get. This is what I'm guessing that it looks like. I got this from runesecrets.com. That I'm sharing their website with you. This is what their website says. And it looks like an F, but it's a rune meaning Ansuz. And it says in the description that's also related to Odin. So Ansuz meaning also a word for God. So this particular kind of rune, that's what I'm guessing the F on the tree looked like. Oh, wait, I'm not showing that to you. Let me try again. There's the F. That's what I'm guessing it is, what it looked like. And then you can see in their description, they associate Odin with that particular letter. So that's certainly very strange symbolism to find at a murder site. And this is why they believe, the defense believes, that Odinists were connected. We'll go into more detail about that. So there's more to come. If your mind is not already blown, there is yet more that you will hear. So they say that one of the people they believe should be a prime suspect put a little hint on his Facebook page to this by putting the phrase "Hail Odin" on his Facebook page. And they say if you combine Abby and the letter Hail with the F, Odin, then he was doing a hint that he had committed this crime. So let's go now into the question of the other suspects. And we're going to kind of go back and forth in this document so you can understand. First, I want to talk to you just a minute about what it is that they say Odinism is, because what, right? I had never heard of it. They point to the Southern Center for Law and Poverty, and what their Southern Poverty Law Center, my apologies. It's not a center for law and poverty. So they talk about a racist brand of neo-paganism related to Odinism that's spreading among white supremacists. And the group also talks about the fact that there have been prison ministries opened with a Satru, or this neo-pagan religion called Odinism, and that some of the key leaders have no neo-Nazi or anti-Semitic background. So and then we go back to what they're going to tell us about paganism on, let's see, page 46. I got my notes here because it's so long, I had to do that. So they say that Odinism, which is closely related to Asatru, was much favored in Nazi Germany. So that's what the defense is telling us about, that it comes from an Icelandic word meaning belief in the Aesir or gods, and it has been officially recognized as a religion in Iceland since 1972. So that's what we hear from the Southern Poverty Law Center and from, I don't know if I ever got that name right. Anyway, Southern Poverty Law Center. And that also is what the defense brief tells us. So now let's talk about the 4 people that Richard Allen presents as potential suspects. And Richard Allen says all 4 of these people are way more likely to have committed the murder than I. So let's take a look at who these people are. And I'm going to, as I said, flip back and forth. So let me go back to page 11. Okay. So they say that there were the clear indications early on that the Odinists should have been pursued. And one person who should have been pursued in particular was someone named Brad Holder, who posted on social media images mimicking the very runes found at the crime scene, a crime scene unreleased and unknown to the general public. So, oh, I'm in the wrong one without my green, my helpful green. Let me head back to that green. I definitely don't want to be without that. That's really helpful. Okay, so they also said that by March 16th, Unified Command, and that's what they describe as all of the different agencies that were trying really hard to find who murdered Abby and Libby, that the Unified Command member wrote that Brad Holder has been cleared. This is shortly after the murders, which were on February 13th, so about a month later. And they say that was way too early. On Brad's, and then they go through just a series of things that they believe suggest Brad Holder knew about these murders. That on his social media account was an image of 2 women, either dead or posed as if they were dead, on the ground in what appeared to be a forest. Both women had tree limbs and sticks arranged on their bodies. One of the women had her arms stretched out above her head, similar to the way that Libby's arm was stretched above her head. Both women were clothed, and the stick and tree branch formations on these girls was different than the stick and tree branch formations on Abby and Libby, but otherwise it bore a very eerie similarity to the murder scene in Delphi. So they're admitting that it's somewhat different, but really coincidental that this person, and why this person in particular is because his son had either was dating or had dated. I found a little bit of trouble figuring that exactly out. Abby. So the son had dated Abby. On Brad, and Winters requested law enforcement to re-interview Brad Holder. When he got that information about the picture on Brad Holder's Facebook page, he said, let's re-interview Brad Holder, but the defense says, we don't think that ever happened. We don't think they ever went back and dealt with that. And so the defense makes a really good point. They say, none of this has been provided to us by the prosecution. Instead, what's happened is we had to go get these. They said they traced a guy who had posted about this, a guy in Georgia, went all the way to Georgia in order to get these pictures and find these in order to help their client. The defense also suggested, and this will be a little out of order, but I'll go through, there are 4 different suspects, and they're all connected to each other in some way. They either knew each other or knew someone. And according to the defense, there's the suggestion that they were all connected or wanting to be connected through this Odinist group. Elvis Fields confessed to his sister that he was involved in the murders, even providing to his sister intimate crime scene details of which only those present at the crime scene would have familiarity. That he was present at the killings, and that he, Elvis, they describe him later as an intellectually disabled adult, that now had a brother and was now part of a gang. In February 2018, Elvis had been questioned by law enforcement but denied involvement in the murders. However, after being dropped off in his trailer following the questioning, Elvis turned around, walked back to the police car, and, according to the police report, asked the state trooper if Elvis's spit is found on one of the girls. But he could explain it away. would he still be in trouble? Elvis also admitted to a different sister that he had, in fact, spit on one of the girls. Elvis told Joyce that he was on a trail and a bridge with 2 girls that were killed and that he was going away for a long time. Really inculpatory statements that suggest he says he did it. Those may have been discounted because law enforcement thought he had the intellectual disability, but his sisters were concerned enough. One of them, according to the defense description, actually made a point of going over to make sure that it was known what had happened. She was concerned about it. Then there's another potential suspect named Patrick Westphal, another Odinite who was living in Delphi, very close to the murder scene, according to the defense. Patrick Westphal and Brad Holder were close friends, and the suggestion here is that something about these murders broke them apart, because it says they were close friends. As of late January, they were pictured together, but they had a break in their friendship. And so after that January 21st photograph, they weren't photographed together again. Holder and Westphal were in, and there were people who told law enforcement that the reason for their split was that Holder and Westphal were in the woods near a river conducting a ritual. One of them said or did something the other did not agree with, and they no longer talked to each other. Brad Holder told his ex-wife that Westphal and his people killed Abby and Libby because one of their mothers was mixing with other people outside the mother's race. I've seen no explanation of that anywhere. I didn't find anything on that, what they're talking about. Is there evidence of that? I wondered. And then a last suspect, Johnny Messer from Rushville. He was a recruiter, they say, for the Odinists, and that his ex-girlfriend told police that Johnny Messer and Patrick Westphal were like brothers. She also told police that she had allowed Johnny to borrow her car on or around Valentine's Day 2017, and the girls were killed on the 13th and their bodies found on Valentine's Day on the 14th, and that Johnny drove her car up there to hang with his Vinlander friends, which they tell you is a name for people who practice Odinium, I think they call it. Odinium. So Odinism, that's it, Odinism. So and when he returned her vehicle, she said it had dried blood over one side of it. Johnny Messer refused to discuss the details of how the blood got there. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend further stated that it took her several car washes to finally remove the blood. I must say about that, I couldn't figure out anything about how they described the scene that would cause blood to get on the side of a car. But in any event, it certainly is suspicious and strange. Messer's ex-girlfriend also told law enforcement that Brad Holder and Johnny Messer were 2 of the most violent people she knew and were fully capable of having been involved in the murders. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend further stated that a motive for their involvement in the murder of Abby and Libby might be the concept of blood in and blood out, which means social acceptance into their secret circles. I'm going to swap this up for this. So in other words, I think what they meant was, in order to buy your way into the group, you had to pay in blood. For blood to come in, blood had to go out. So something along those lines. Johnny Messer's ex-girlfriend had been listening to and recording Johnny Messer's phone calls. Police secured the phone and listened to 3 phone calls involving Johnny Messer. In 2 of those phone calls, Messer was offering money to other people to find someone so they can be injured or killed. The 3rd call involves Messer bragging about holding a subject hostage and shooting them at his house. So certainly supporting what the girlfriend was suggesting, which was that he was quite violent. So let's see, we are on page 19, and I want to go, actually, it says 57 there, but I changed that to 48. Okay. Brad Holder, and we're back to Brad Holder, painted what the defense would call a very creepy serial killer looking image of a naked man hanging from a tree. Some more strange circumstances there. And then we're going to roll through here, and I've got some more green comments for you. This point can't be emphasized enough, the defense argues. The Odinite angle was abandoned by March 2017, and you'll hear why in just a minute, only a few weeks after the girls were murdered. The reason for this abandonment, that I don't think this is why, but a Purdue professor had reached a conclusion concerning Odinism and the crime scene. Of course, Holman tells one thing under oath about that conclusion. Odinism and cults were not involved in the murders, and another thing to Purdy, which were the results were inconclusive. So the defense believes they abandoned the Odinite angle way too early, and that's how they ended up with Richard Allen. So that's their argument. Let's keep rolling through here. Brad Holder admitted that he spent every weekend hanging out with his friend Patrick Westphal in Delphi and participated in Asatru religious ceremonies on Sundays with Patrick Westphal, or on Sunday with Patrick Westphal. And Amber Holder, Brad Holder's, I believe, ex-wife, had another conversation with him, inquired about Patrick Westphal under the ruse that Amber's girlfriend had a date with Patrick. Brad told her Westphal and his crew was responsible for the murders of the girls in Delphi and a fire that killed 2 other girls. Amber said that Brad told her that Westphal belonged to a group called the Vinlanders, and 22, Brad told her that Westphal had many people backing him up and powerful friends. He also told her that Patrick had killed a lot of people and it didn't matter if they were innocent or not. Prior to Amber leaving, she said that Brad told her to stay off Westphal's radar, and I can only protect you so much if you keep asking questions. The defense also argued that on April 7, 2017, and this is not long after the murders, Holder posted a photo of a hand marked with the exact rune found on Abby's body, which of course nobody knew about at that time. Nobody knew that that was actually marked on Abby's body, so no one reported that to law enforcement at the time. They wouldn't have known that that was a connection, which is certainly an argument for the law enforcement maybe releasing a bit more of the details than they did. And we're going to skip that. I'm going to come back to that. And have I finished? No, we'll keep going. We're going to come back to that part, though. Okay. Trooper Purdy and Trooper Winters were aware of an eerie image on Brad Holder's Facebook page of what appeared to be a faked murder scene mimicking Abby and Libby's murder scene. Now, a lot of these were attached to as exhibits, and the court can look at them, but we can't. All we've got is the pleading and the description of them. So is the eerie image really like this faked murder scene? Is it really like the murder scene of Abby and Libby? We don't really know. What we have is the statement from the defense that that's what they believe. So although both girls are dressed and the limbs on the girls are not arranged exactly like the limbs and sticks on Abby and Libby, the similarity of that photo is pronounced. That's what they tell us. And they point out that the law enforcement received tips telling them about this post, and that this was the father of the ex-boyfriend of Abby, and it shows him a member of Vinlanders with posts of half-dead women and fascination with tree branches and symbols. So they say law enforcement knew about this, and therefore it should have been told as exculpatory evidence when they presented the search warrant. That's their argument. That Winters wrote in the report that the provided media pictures show unknown young girls believed to be deceased with sticks placed over their bodies. And that law enforcement, they point out, still has never turned this over to them. The only way they know about this information is through their own research and what they've been doing. So, and that they don't have this image that supposedly Brad posted on his Facebook page. And Ritt's defense team learned that Trooper Holman finally did follow up on Winters' request by re-interviewing Holder. Boy, wouldn't you like to know what that says? But they haven't received that first interview yet, so they're kind of thinking maybe there will be no quick result of getting the second one either. Brad Holder created a creepy painting of a man hanging upside down, and there were 2 clues in it, a red F at the base of the tree, and then it also had his legs posed similar to Abby's. So those are things that they, in their minds, sort of clued in as being similar, made them think that Brad Holder was connected. So I'm going to skip a little bit here because that there was a meme that Brad Holder posted just 3 days after the girls' bodies were found, which discussed how real friends will help you move dead bodies. And then the friends will keep their mouths shut. And it was deleted, but then it was recovered by law enforcement. So again, all we have is what's said in the brief. We don't have a copy of it. We don't know that law enforcement found it, but the defense is saying that law enforcement actually had it and that that's what it actually stated. And that certainly would be very inculpatory. It would certainly make you think twice about whether he had some involvement. And I'll go ahead and skip over the primary reason I believe that the prosecution stopped pursuing Brad Holder and said, we don't think he's connected, law enforcement, is because apparently he had good proof that he was at work. And the defense tries to break into that and say, well, you know, maybe somebody else drove his car, maybe someone else clocked him out, and so he really left 2 hours early. But according to them, they think that the defense thinks he must have done something to leave work, assuming the girls were killed in this 2-hour period. And maybe there's some question about that. Maybe they all gathered later and the girls were killed slightly later. Maybe it's something along those lines. But in any event, what they're saying is that what law enforcement believed was that he was at work during the period when the girls were murdered, and therefore he could not conceivably have been involved. And the defense argues you didn't go into that hard enough. You didn't look to see where the other people could have been holding the girls. He came later. You didn't look into it. So that's the defense argument. So let's see. I think we've covered that. Confession. I don't want to redo because we've already gone pretty long. So in summary, let me sort of summarize what they said about these potential other witnesses. So the scene was connected to Odinism with these stick runes and with the letter F painted in blood on the tree. That Richard Allen wasn't an Odinist. So he is not the person who did this. That these 4 men, on the other hand, either knew each other or had connections with each other. And there were many signs that some of them knew too much and knew things that people didn't know in the public. So law enforcement should have chased them harder. Now, they also talk, and I'm going to go ahead and show you 2 sketches, and these are the 2 sketches that law enforcement put out. They look extremely different. Like, I think the 2 men look 20 years apart in terms of age. I think the one of the older man looks potentially like Richard Allen. The other person, not so much. And so they say, look, all of the eyewitnesses, although they talked about, this clothing and the cars and stuff, that's all pretty iffy because it's really inconclusive. Nobody said this. I saw Richard Allen on that bridge. They saw somebody who was wearing this kind of clothing, and that's all they really had. So I want to flip to our last topic for the night, which is Odinites and the patches, because this is really wild. The defense is saying that Richard Allen is being held and controlled by Odinist guards at his jail, that they even wore patches signifying their involvement with Odinism until they realized that Richard Allen's legal team had caught them and figured out what they were doing. And then they took those patches off. They have a photograph in the documents where they show what these patches look like. And so their argument is, I'll go ahead and flip over and show you that. They showed a couple of different patches, but they say they never got photographs of it, and that these patches are no longer on the guard's clothing. I don't know, maybe they would have some kind of way of seeing that there was a place where the patch had been on. If you've ever sewn Boy Scout patches on, you know how that works. So, and then this is one, I hate people. I don't know if that's Odinism, but it certainly does seem unpleasant. I would say that at least, at a minimum, it does seem unpleasant. So the whole argument about the patches just seems really strange. That is an argument that they're making as part of why they argue Richard Allen ought to be transferred. They say these Odinist guards are with him at all times, that they hover nearby so they're unable to speak openly to their clients, and that they are concerned for his mental health and also for his ability to talk to them because of the fact that these Odinist guards are constantly hanging by. Now, over time, this whole defense, which you have to say is wild. Am I right? Wild. But this is only part of what some of the theories were. There was also a significant theory that lasted for a while that was definitely in the public about catfishing, and that somebody might have been catfishing Abby Williams to get her to come and meet them. And that's why the girls were taking the walk that day. The boy here, they say that's no one who was involved in this, but that may have been the picture that was sent to Abby to try to get her to show up. Did that have anything to do with Brad Holder's son, Logan, dating her? We never heard anything about that. The defense doesn't argue it, doesn't mention it. It may be completely irrelevant because the only thing they're talking about through this brief is the Odinism and their belief that these other 4 people may have been the ones who committed these murders. Now, personally, I have never, ever heard the like of this kind of case. It is absolute insanity. I really do think that Corey Richens may need to take some lessons here. If she's going to write books about crimes, this has more than you can possibly imagine. So I am really curious about what your thoughts are so far. What are the questions that you really want answered? From what do you want law enforcement to figure out, or what do you want the defense to figure out, so that we can get some answers here? And do you want to hear more about what happens in this case? Now, the prosecution response has been nothing in writing yet, but just that this is colorful, dramatic, and all made up. It's just nonsense, totally unrealistic, not a fair representation of what happened. They think they got the right guy. They think it's Richard Allen. That's what they're saying. So let me quickly go to some of the questions and the super chats, if I can. I may have to scroll through. Normally I'm able to see them at the top, but I'm not seeing them. So let me scroll through, because I saw at least 2. I saw Mr. RN saying hello. Good to hear from you. And then I saw another one, and I didn't catch that one as I was talking. So let me make sure I say hello. So still looking. Sorry, I am scrolling patiently. Maybe if I open this up a little more. Ah, there we go. Yep, that's it. Patricia Cox, good to hear from you too. I appreciate that. And so I would like to know what y'all think about this case. I want to thank Marlon and mamapinks for moderating. And that reminds me, I received something special. I'm going to open it in front of y'all. I haven't seen it myself yet. Well, he sent it to me in a photograph of it. But Marlon made this for me. And dang, let me make sure I get it in the right spot for you to see. Is that crazy or what? Marlon has some mad skills. Am I right? That is absolutely amazing. I totally love that. So the 2, and it's got all kinds of symbolism. The birds are my husband and me. I've got my son and my daughter and my granddaughter, and all kinds of things. It's fantastic. And I want to say thank you to Marlon for that. That's amazing. Serious mad skills, Marlon. That is absolutely incredible. Really impressive. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, as you know, we go live Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. So I will look forward to seeing you. Oh, I can tell you what Monday is. We are going to be talking to a reporter from South Carolina, and we're going to be talking about the Becky Hill matter. And we're going to be answering some of your questions about whether or not were there ethical improprieties. There was a letter she received from the Ethics Commission. Did that make everything that happened okay? What exactly are the rules around that? And so we're going to be talking to a reporter from South Carolina who's been doing some investigative work on this, so we can find out a lot more about it. And I am looking forward to seeing you on Monday at 7 o'clock. Have a great weekend, everybody.